One situation where I had to deal with a difficult coworker was at my last job at a restaurant. I had one coworker that would just get a little irritated a lot and a little over angry in situations. And the way I handled it is I would just kind of let them voice their frustrations, let them deal with it. And normally things ended up handling themselves and everything was just fine and they would eventually calm down. One significant challenge that I faced at work before was I was a host at a restaurant and there was a lot of people waiting and people were getting angry at me because they couldn't get seated, even though it's not my fault. And I had to try and politely explain to them why we couldn't seat them and how long it would be. And even though the people were less restless and getting mad at me, I just had to maintain composure and be nice to them and tell them all I could about when they would be able to get seated. One time I had to make a difficult decision is when I was around probably 12 years old, and I grew up playing soccer my whole life, but I started liking hockey and I started trying to play that a little bit. But my parents told me I had to pick one sport, and even though I liked hockey a lot, I just stuck to soccer. And because I've been playing it longer and I already knew what that was like. If I had to manage two high priority projects with conflicting deadlines, I would make sure to set up a plan to put aside time for both of them on days and make sure to plan out the different phases of the projects to organize it to make sure it gets completed on time. If a coworker was consistently not meeting their deadlines, I would address this issue by pulling them aside at some point and politely telling them what they're not doing well on and how they could fix it and what they need to do to fix that. And I would try doing that in a very open and polite manner, but also let them know that they need to do better. If I received criticism from a supervisor or manager, I would handle it by, I would at first recognize the criticism from them, and then I would think pretty hard about what I could do to make sure whatever I did wrong or whatever I messed up on does not happen in the future. If I discovered a mistake on a report that had already been submitted, I would reach out to the client and I would let them know. Well, first I would fix it. I would fix the problem in the report. I would send them a new copy of the report, and I would also let the client know that there was an error in the other report and that this new report is the one that they should use. And I would also apologize to them for the inconvenience because we know we already gave them one that was not correct. One time how I managed to complete a project on time with limited resources or tight deadlines was I would do this by making sure I stay focused on the project and organize it in ways so I set aside time for different aspects of the project. Like if it was an essay, for example, I would make sure I'd set aside like an hour to work on the introduction, and then another hour work on the body paragraphs, and then the conclusion, and then set aside more time to edit it. I would just make sure that I stayed focused and just did what I needed to do when I set up the time to organize it.